Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Arshil here, and I'm actually sat here with a very good friend of mine who's famously known as the HMO Daddy. And to his friends, his name is Jim Halliburton. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Arsh.
How are you doing? How's your day been?
It's been fantastic. Been to the Landlords show in London and had a good time there. Some chap was presenting there. Do you know who it was?
I think that was me, Jim.
Yes. Good day, yes. And I'm very pleased. Arsh has agreed to host this webinar. And all those who are listening, feel free to participate. It's your webinar, so ask questions, and we'll try and deal with as many as we can during the webinar. But also, we're going to do another webinar because this one was sold out on next Monday. So you don't get a chance to get your questions answered tonight. Then the next webinar's on next Monday, so you can ask some more questions.
Is that between 8 and 9 o'clock next Monday, Jim?
That's right. It's 8 to 9 o'clock next Monday. So get registering now, because you don't want to have another sellout and you miss out again. So opportunity to listen in again and say, get your questions going. Anyway, great. Hello, Harry. Nice to see you joined us there. And there's Ravi, just come along. Nice to see you there as well.
Just before we can start, Jim, do you mind if I ask all people who are listening in, can you just say yes or no if you can hear Jim correctly or if you can hear him clearly?
Yep. Thanks, Paul, for telling us there. Hello, Anne. Good. Ravi's there. Jason.
Perfect. Okay, so everyone's that said yes. If there are any problems throughout the webinar, I'll be monitoring as well. If there's any problems, please put it in so that we can rectify it as quickly as possible, because the last thing we want to do is be able to say that you haven't received any information from it. So I'm going to pass you over to Jim now, and who's going to be talking about how he's actually acquired, what did we say, Jim? Is it 20 properties and within 12 months, but have cost him absolutely nothing?
Yeah, I've acquired 20 properties. They cost me, as you say, nothing. Well, I tell a slight lie there. A couple of them cost me £1. I had to pay a option fee on those, but the rest cost me nothing. It's just a wonderful way of getting hold of properties. You wonder why you spent time buying them and going for the cost of legal fees, valuation fees. And even though I'm experienced in buying properties, I found that about 20% of my purchases failed. And you still have to pay the legal fees. You still have to pay the valuation fees. The vendor walks away because they've decided not to proceed with the deal, and they don't pay you a penny. That's the UK system. Your deal's not made until you've signed the contract. So the beauty of doing what is called rent to rent, though I prefer to do a rent to rent with the right to buy, it gives me the option to buy, but not the obligation to buy. So rent to rent's very simple. You rent the property and then rent it on to other tenants. In other words, sublet it. And it's perfectly legitimate. You're not conning anyone. The owner of the property knows exactly what I'm planning to do, though many of them don't care, because their motivation to give you the property is not so much based on what you're going to do with it, but their problem with the property.
Can everyone hear that?
Okay.
Okay, we just have a bit of feedback.
Okay.
Right, Jim, off you go.
Right, let's get a move on then. The clicker's not working. We come on to the next slide. Who gave Jim that tie? Yes. Who's asked that question about that? Martin, yeah. Martin knows that most of my ties and clothes come from my tenants. They very kindly donate their what they leave behind. I can use. One of the benefits of being a landlord is tenants leave and often leave a lot of stuff behind. So I used to feed the dog on very much, when I had students, the amount of food that students left behind was phenomenal, because mummy and daddy would come along and fill the fridge for them, and they probably wouldn't even have a clue how to open the fridge, never mind cook any of the food. So when they left, shame waste, throw it all away. I'll give it to the dog. Anyway, those who don't know anything about me, I've been an HMO landlord since 1991. I was a college lecturer for over 25 years. And where am I? Sorry. That's it. I acquired, I started off very slowly because I hadn't got the confidence, I hadn't got the knowledge of how to do it. It's only when I gave up full-time employment, when I had 38 properties at that time, I started to acquire properties very, very quickly. And after a period of time, you'll find acquiring properties and turning them into multi-lets is very easy. It's not hard. The hard part of this business is not getting the properties, whether you buy them or you get them for nothing. Even looking after the tenants is not a problem. I dare to say the difficulty or the challenge I have is when you start becoming big and then you have management problems and the problems with employees. But if you keep it to, say, 20 properties, you manage it yourself, it may seem a bit tedious, but it's nothing like the problems you have when trying to do it on a large scale. But anyway, that's my problems. Running properties didn't give me the challenge that I used to get from lecturing, and therefore I started getting into the whys and wherefores of this, and wrote a book on how to be an HMO landlord. I also run operating standards. I wrote a 200-page operating standards. It shows my staff how to run the business, and that's based on 20 years experience of doing the business. So there's very little now that where we have a problem, we don't know what's going on. And then towards later, the last 5 years, we had a lot of problems with tenants not paying the rent and wouldn't leave. Before, when I used to manage the properties myself, I'd go and have a little chat with the tenants, and if they didn't pay the rent, they would decide to leave. I found that became more difficult the bigger I became, and therefore had to evict using the court process. I got fed up doing that, so I did it myself through the courts and found I could streamline the system very simply, very easily. I'm even surprised now. I've done over 250 evictions. Everyone has worked. I expected to have more problems than I did. And most of them, I get the eviction on the first time. And I'm in the process of writing another book, Tales from a Landlord, plus a couple of others. They're all almost ready to be published and will be published fairly soon. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. Let's get on about talking about tonight. I'm renowned for being straight talking. I don't mean to be. I'm not meaning to be blunt or upsetting anyone when I talk about HMOs. I just say this is as it is. There's roses smell and they have thorns on them. You can't wrap it around in any other way. And this business, I think if you're trying to pretend it's anything other than it is, which is fantastically good, but it does have its problems like everything else. Anyway, let's get on to some of the basics. What is an HMO? Thank you. An HMO is a property let to 3 or more unrelated people. It is 3. A lot of people get the wrong idea about it, and they think that it has to have 5. It isn't. By law, it's 3. In practice, around most of the country, no one bothers with anything less than 5 tenants. Doesn't take away from the fact that it is still an HMO if there's 3 people in the property, if they're unrelated. A family can be any number. You could have a family of 10 living in a property, and it's not considered an HMO. It's when you bring in unrelated people living together. There's certain myths about HMOs that put a lot of people off, and I'd really like to dispel these. And I'm talking from experience here. I'm not talking from someone who just does HMOs. I've got 30 single lets, and single lets are very good. They are let and forget. HMOs, I agree, take more effort, but not that much more effort. And when you take into account the return that you get from an HMO, it totally bypasses, overtakes, as a racing car would overtake a horse and carriage, uh, the benefits of being uh, by being a multi-let landlord. The returns, I would say, on average, you're getting something like 4 to 8 times the income from a property afterwards. And I explained this to you. If you have a look at the next slide that's coming up about this, it will explain to you how that comes about. But let's just go back some of the myths about HMOs. All HMOs need licenses. That's not true. It has to be a property that's 3 stories and has 5 or more tenants and share kitchen and bathroom. That is the what we call mandatory properties. In other words, they must be licensed, and it's all 3 requirements. It has to be 3 stories, and it has to have 5 more tenants, and they have to share. So a property that's only got 2 stories and has only, say, it has, say, 12 tenants, wouldn't need to be licensed. A property that has 3 stories and has, say, 6 tenants in wouldn't be licensed if they didn't share anything about, they didn't share any facilities. In other words, they're all self-contained. The fact that people say it takes time to run an HMO, that comes down to 2 things. One, if you're managing it yourself. If you're not managing it yourself, it doesn't take any time because you're getting someone else to do it for you. Whether you employ a letting agent, which is, there are people now out there who are specialising in managing HMOs, or if you employ someone to do it, then that again takes the time away from you. I firmly believe the best person to manage your HMO is yourself. No one does it better than you can. The problem about employing other people is, 1, they cost you money, and 2, at the very best, they're probably only 80% as good as you. So if you add on the, say, 10% cost it's to that you have to pay them to manage it, and the 20% inefficiency, you're losing 30% out of the business. Now, okay, HMOs can make a lot of money, so you can afford to do that, but I think you'd be far better doing it yourself, and it's quite enjoyable. But then again, I'm maybe a bit strange. The time factor, again, comes down to 2 things. 1, how close you are to the properties. I always say you should buy almost in line of sight, fairly close by to where you are. And secondly, the type of tenant that you're talking about. Professionals, good working people, don't take much management. They look after the property, they take responsibility. If you're dealing with the other end of the market, you're talking about DSS, they take more time. I'm always surprised how little DSS tenants do. My friend Arsh, you still awake, Arsh?
I'm still here.
Yeah. Arsh has this lovely phrase about DSS tenants. They're far too busy to do anything. And that's the truth of it. They can't be bothered to call out the plumber if there's a problem. They'll either haven't got credit on the phone, or they haven't got time to wait for the plumber to come round. They just won't help out in running the property, while working people accept that they have to do this. But even a DSS property, I'd say, wouldn't take much more than an hour a week to manage. So one's let to professionals, you're talking about minutes a week to manage, and the DSS end of the market only takes about an hour a week. And considering that you only probably need about 5 HMOs to be financially independent, and I'd say that most people would be quite happy with, say, about 60 grand a year, 5 grand a month coming in to be financially independent. You only need about 5 HMOs to do that. Yes, there's a lot of laws involved in HMOs, but there's lots of laws in everything. No one worries about the laws in motoring, and you get sent to prison and fined if you break the laws when it comes to being a motorist. Yes, so you have to watch that. It doesn't take that long to learn. I do a course, and we'll be talking a bit more about the course later on tonight, where in the space of a few hours, I'll go through the 14 things you have to do for an HMO. It's not hard to learn. It's not difficult. And on the whole, most local authorities are out there to help you. So they will tell you what you should have to do and advise you and make sure you do it. People say HMOs are expensive to set up. Again, that's probably true compared to a single let. There is more money involved, but it depends again on whether you do it yourself. If you do the work yourself, you're fairly handy. You can save yourself a fortune because most building work is labour. Only a small fraction is the materials. And again, it comes down to what, to a certain extent, to what the local authorities insist you do. So you follow them, they will explain to you what you have to do, and you can set up an HMO for as little as £3,000, or you can spend a lot more. So the summary is there's not that much difference between a single let and a multi-let. A lot of this information that's put out there that says it's a bad thing to do, and it's a lot of hard work, isn't true. Have we had any questions in yet, Arsh?
Yeah, no, there's one question which Adam has brought in. And if you've got a question about anything that Jim has spoken about right now, now's the time to ask it. Adam says, well, but a two-story house plus a loft equals 3 stories. Technically speaking, Adam, when we talk about 3 stories, we're talking about 3 habitable stories. So a loft, unless it's boarded out and actually being used as a bedroom or a living room, is not considered to be another story. It's the same as a basement. If a basement's converted into a bathroom or another habitable room, yes, it is considered 3-story. I'm hoping that's answered your question, Jim. Can you confirm?
You're absolutely right. But don't worry about it. People get really upset about the fact of licensing a property. Yeah, okay, it costs you money to license a property. The average cost of a license is 500 quid. But remember, that lasts for 5 years. And it usually takes most local authorities over a year to issue the license. You don't have to wait until you have the license issued. As soon as you have applied, you can use the property as an HMO. So you can have 4 tenants in it. Once you get the 5th tenant in the property, then you have to license it. It'll probably take a year for it to be issued. That's 6 years. The beauty of licensing a property is you get almost a stamp of respectability. Should anything go wrong and the local authority have licensed you, you can throw it back to the local authority and say, but they licensed me, I'm doing what they do. So you've, in effect, you can hide behind the skirts of the local authority by saying they've checked it, they said it was safe. I've had 1 or 2 tenants recently try to sue me saying the property was unsafe. And one of the biggest defences I've had and put a stop to it is by saying, well, it's a licensed property. The local authority checked it and they said it was okay. And the solicitors very quickly went away.
Jim, one very quick question that John's asked is, he's being a little bit cheeky. What's your monthly cash flow from your HMOs?
Does he work for the revenue on this one? Yes, it's not as easy to set up. After all, when you run your own business, you're very much in control of the profit of it. So I don't really look upon the cash flow factor of the whole business. I just look upon, does it work? Does it pay for itself? And I'm happy if there's a surplus left over, so I don't have to worry about getting things paid.
Okay, so what we're going to do, Jim, is we're going to move on to some of the meaty stuff because I'm very conscious of time as well. What I'd like to do is get you started talking about some of your HMOs, but more importantly, some of the HMOs that you've acquired for nothing, because that's the real meat of the talk tonight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thanks for bringing us on track there, Arsh. I do tend to go off on a side alley. Right, before we get on to that one, I really want to talk about the first HMO because that gives you an example of what you can have. The first one I acquired cost me $35,000. I bought it in 1991. The HMO I bought below market value. I rented to students in those days. The first 5 or 6 properties I had were all let to students. Interesting market. I would not go back to it. A lot of people love it, mainly because I haven't done anything else. I've let to students. I've let to working people. I let to professionals. I've let to DSS. I've done corporate lets. And I'll tell you what, not quite the bottom of the market is the student market. Why? Because I like to let and forget. We're all naturally lazy. I like my tenants to move in and stay there. The problem with students is they're guaranteed almost to leave every year. They're good fun. They're lovely group. They're quite buoyant. I feel a bit depressed. I go around and see the students. They're all usually fairly cheerful, buzzing, full of good ideas, that type of thing. But they leave, and they also lack a little bit of responsibility. They're not as bad as the young DSS tenants by any means, but it's the first time they've been away from home. The first one cost me 35,000. It now brings in an income of 36,000, and that was within 17 years of buying it. Get your head around that. Within 17 years of buying the property, the income I was getting from the property equals what I paid for it. Now, in 20 years' time, well, this property is now worth 350,000. In 20 years' time, I'm going to be getting 350,000 a year out of that property in income. I cannot believe it. My mind cannot conceive such growth, but it wouldn't have believed it 20 years ago. You just cannot comprehend the income you can get from properties. And talking about the income from property, I do this little exercise. If you take a property in my area and you have to adapt it to whatever area you're dealing with, has a gross rent, say, of 5,200 a year, £100 a week for a two-bedroom house, 5,200 per annum. Say you had a mortgage of 3,200 on it, that gives you a cash flow of £2,000. So 5,200 left with 2,000. I'm trying to do an apples with apple comparison. Take an HMO, take the same two-bedroom property, you can split it into 6 bedrooms. Now, how can you do that, Jim? Is the thing that's amazing. I do a tour of HMOs. We take people around and show them how you can split the property up, and they find it amazing. A room, by law, has to be at least 65 square feet. For those in metrics, 6.5 square meters. I'll repeat that. 65 square feet or 6.5 square meters, and has a window, opening window. Now, if you take an ordinary two-bedroom terraced house, they usually have 2 bedrooms, which are 12 foot by 12 foot, which is 140 square foot. So you can see you get 4 rooms upstairs. Downstairs, you'll have a lounge and usually a back room. You can see how you can split it up with 6 rooms, still have some communal area. In this area, that kind of those type of rooms are let to DSS tenants. They are on a tight budget, and we get about 65 quid a week. So 6 rooms, 65 quid a week. Round figures gives you over 20 grand a year. Take off your mortgage, 3,200. You end up with 17,000 a year. A lot of people say, but you got the bills with an HMO. Well, if you talk to my friend Arsh, he has a no bills policy with his HMOs. He will not pay anything on the property. I tend to provide my tenants with central heating. I pay the water rates and the council tax. But you don't have to. There are ways round it. But even if you do pay all the bills, it comes to, on average, about 3,600 or £300 a month for the bills per annum. And that's based on analysing the costs for over 100 HMOs. So that's even you pay all the bills yourself. So you're still left, at the end of the day, with around about £14,000 cash flow. That's with paying the bills. 7 times the income you'd have as a single let. So if you want to pay the bills, the council tax, the water rates, central heating, electric, and the broadband, it still leaves you with a substantial profit. How you would go about doing it is up to you. I'm historically stuck with the problem of providing central heating for my tenants because I've always done it. And it's simple as that. You're not going to do it straight away. You're not going to get your HMO and give up the job tomorrow. It's going to take you about, probably I'd say, 12 months to set it up. So this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. A year or two, you'll get your HMOs set up, you get them running nicely, then you'll be able to get your income replaced for yourself. As for, sorry, you're going to say?
I was just going to say a couple of questions that are coming in. People are saying, where does it say about 65 square foot per room? The one thing that you've just got to be careful of is that every council has what they consider housing standards guideline. So it'd be really important for you guys, if you are starting out, to go to your council and ask what the minimum room requirement is. For a standard room where they just sleep, in Wolverhampton and around our area. It's what is it, Jim? 6 square.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Wolverhampton, but certainly Birmingham, the Black Country, it's 65 square foot with a shared lounge. So that's generally for most of the country. But you've got people like Leeds who want 100 square feet. It's up to the local authority to do this. But remember, these are guidelines. It's not law. The law is 65 is the minimum. Some local authorities say they want more. Well, I want a Mercedes. Well, I've got a Mercedes. That's why I've got it. But it doesn't mean to say just because I want something, I'm going to get it. These are guidelines that local authorities have. They're not law, and they could be challenged. But if you want an easy life, do what your local authority wants. It saves problems. People, they also worry you have, a lot of people have this great fear, where am I going to get tenants from? There is an enormous explosion in demand for accommodation. It's unbelievable. I started off in Wednesbury. This is a town with 8,000 population. I've got 20 HMOs in that area. In other words, over 140 beds of accommodation in a population of 8,000. If any rational analysis would have said, you're probably lucky to get one HMO in Wednesbury, never mind 20. It's one of my better letting areas. I've never yet found a place where I cannot let a property. I find some are slow and therefore not very keen to go and let in that area again. But even areas vary within the street. So you go from one end of the street to the other, you find one is easier to let than others. It's very much a sort of suck it and see. If you want some good guidance as to where to position your property, town centres generally tend to work far better than outside towns. But I've never yet had a property where I find difficulty in finding tenants for them. However, it's the slow areas you end up letting to DSS tenants where you can choose. I tend to prefer to choose for working on professional tenants. Even though I'm getting to love my DSS tenants, and there are advantages to having DSS tenants, while Arsh really just wants DSS tenants. Is that right, Arsh?
That's correct, yes. I only rent to people on benefits, and the reason why I do that is because I think it's a secure income. Yes, you can rent to professional tenants, but I think that the benefit tenants are far more suited for the accommodation. And we have a 100% rent collection record and a 98% occupancy rate. So, Jim,
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of time. So what I'd like to do is that I'm going to skip a few slides if possible.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because our friend Jim likes to jabber. Jibber? Jabber.
Jibber jabber.
And then the one thing that I really would like to hear from Jim as well, as I'm always learning from Jim, as Jim is learning from that we need to know how he gets HMOs, and more importantly, how he gets them, where vendors literally come and throw him the keys and said, "Take it, Jim."
Yeah, it's an absolute mystery. I started doing rent to rent back in '95, before it became popular. People like Rick Otten came here and said, "Look, this is what we do in Australia and New Zealand and America. They are much more imaginative in the ways they acquire properties there, and they use lots more different approaches than we do in England. In England, we tend to have the two approaches to property: you either buy it or you rent it. While rent to rent or rent with a right to buy, which is called a lease option, how did it come about? It came about by accident. I'm very much sort of based on practice. In other words, what works, not some theory that you made up in the bath. And the first property I got came about because I was asked for some advice by a lady who'd bought a property and was having problems with it. And because I love the property business, I've done very well out of it. I'm always happy to share my experiences and go and talk to her. So I went and had a chat with her about the property. It's a lovely big property in Birmingham. I went round there, had a look round, enormous, and I said, what you want to do is rent this by the room, and you'll get a lot more income for it. Coming back to what we were saying, you would at least gets where about we now? You're going to get at least 4 or 5 times the gross rent, and you'll net a good 7 times the net income. So 5 times the gross income, 7 times the net income out of the property by multi-letting. And I went through and explained very thoroughly how she could do it, but she wasn't interested. She was just a fed-up landlady. She had been doing this for 7 years. She had had 3 tenants, and each of the tenants had done the usual trick of coming in, didn't pay the rent. They paid some rent, but not all of it, and they left the place in a mess. And she just got fed up with it. And she said, will you do it? And I scratched my head and I thought, well, I don't really want to do it. I've got enough properties as I have. And so I asked her how much her mortgage was, and it was £200 a month. I said, okay, I'll pay your mortgage and I'll take it off you. And she was happy with that. And that's how I got my first property. I've got over 20 of them, and there's probably about 10 different stories that I can tell you about how I acquired these properties. And each one, if I was to sum up, how do you get your properties? It's being prepared to say yes. Could you, within, I'm talking about seconds, not hours or years or weeks, but within seconds, decide on how you would buy a property. Would you take it? And would you be ready to go ahead with that? And once you're ready to go, the opportunities will come to you. Yes, you can go out and you can leaflet. Yes, you can advertise. Yes, you can go around using the estate agent approach, where you go around to estate agents and letting agents and say, have you got any landlords who can't sell their properties or can't rent their properties? You can do the direct marketing approach, but it's a bit like, have you seen a green car? No, I haven't spotted a green car. But you go out and look tonight, you'll spot a green car. If you're ready to take on a property, you know what you want, then you'll find the opportunities will present yourself without putting too much effort into marketing. I have only once tried to market for properties, and I didn't really find that was particularly successful. I find them you can get your properties by being prepared to take them. And yes, there's more people coming into the market, and that makes it more acceptable. I like people doing the same thing. It makes a more beaten track. People become accepting of this approach, and from the owner's point of view, it is a win-win situation. They still own the property, so they can have the capital appreciation, and it takes away from them all the worries about buying them. The old way I used to buy properties was to buy them. That's how I got most of my properties. I would buy them. I would then get them revalued on income. One of the big advantages, if you own the property and you have an HMO, it can be valued on bricks and mortar, or it can be valued on the income side of things. And the income is very simple. You just take a multiple of the rent. And the multiple of the rent you take, the gross rent, is between 7 and probably 12, maybe a bit more down southeast, the income. So you've got an income of, say, £30,000 on the property. In this area, that property would probably be worth 210,000 on income. While down south, it would be worth probably maybe over 300. What would that be? 12 times. My maths are slow here. 360,000 pounds. Shows the difference to the way the properties are taken, and that's how it's just what is the demand in the area for the property. So the beauty of not buying it is you don't have to go through all the problems of finding valuers, valuation fees, solicitors, the risk of losing it all, and all that stress and time of trying to get a mortgage and the rest of it. A rent to rent is you just do the agreement, take on the property, and you don't have to take on the liability. You're not stuck with the property because it's owned by someone else. The only advantage of owning a property, it gives you the right to take a benefit of the capital appreciation, and you can cash out by remortgaging, and that is phenomenal. The beauty of owning property is you can take advantage of the massive increase in property, and property is supposed to go up on average about 10% per annum. And if you do remortgage, that's all tax-free. For those of you who are interested in buying property, I've now offer the opportunity of working with people who want to buy properties. I'll do it all for you. I'll buy it. I'll rent it out. I'll manage it all for you, and we'll go 50-50 on the profit.
Just to be clear there,
Yeah.
Jim, you're saying that you want people to put money into the deal. You'll find the correct property. You'll create the HMO. You'll license the HMO. You'll get all the correct consents, and then on that basis, you'll manage it as well on the basis of a profits split on the profits.
Yes. Instead of me bothering to going through the hassle of buying it for myself, it's not a hassle because I can do it myself quite easily. But for my own personal reasons, for tax reasons, I don't want to buy any more properties. I want to put properties in the name of my children. And one easy way of doing it is to JV with other investors. They buy the property in their name, and we share the profit with my children and the JV investor. But the JV investor has the security. They own the property legally. We have an agreement that it's shared, and I do all the work for them. They can shadow. It's also an interesting way of learning how to do it yourself. I've had JV investors come along because they don't quite believe it works. So they have paid for the property, they've seen it being converted, then they see it being remortgaged, and getting all the money back out, sometimes even more than what they put in. So they get all the money back out and they get an income for life out of it. And they think, well, that's pretty simple. I'll do that myself and go off and do it. I don't mind that. It's a way of learning by shadowing, seeing it done for themselves. They still own the property. It's a cheap way of having a training course because you actually end up getting paid for being shown how to do it.
Right.
However, we want to talk about the new way of doing this. If anyone's interested in JVing with me, just email me and we'll send you a JV pack which explains it all to you. And if you want to know more, you can phone my manager, Wayne. The numbers on my website, and he'll be happy to chat to you about it.
Well, just by a show of yeses or nos, is there interest? Would people like to JV with Jim? On the basis that the properties have to be local to here, Jim?
Yeah. Remember what I said earlier? Yeah, I believe that you should be within line of sight of properties. So the JVs are properties I do in my own area, which is a very good area for getting hold of properties because they're still remarkably cheap compared to, say, the southeast. So yes, the properties will be bought in this area, and you'll own them rather than in your own area.
So, okay, Jim, we've talked about the traditional methods. We've talked about the traditional methods of purchasing a HMO. Now, what we need to know is what's the new way?
Right, the new way. Let's get on to this. So what we're talking about. The new way is very simple. It's called rent to rent. And it's nothing complicated. It's not illegal or in any way like that. You rent a property from the owner, but instead of being a residential occupier of the property, you're clear to the owner, you're renting their property to multi-let it to other tenants. In other words, sublet it. So you take a property off them. It's not an AST. You lease it from them with the right to convert it into a multi-let and to let it to other people. So you're up front about it. It's a lot of it's to do with the language you use. I say to people, I can give you a guaranteed rent on the property. And the reason I can give you this guaranteed rent is I'm making a lot of money out of it by renting it by the room. Now, to rent it by the room, I don't say to them, I'm going to have to alter your property. I say I have to improve your property because I'm going to have to put fire doors in. I'm going to have to put a fire alarm in. I'm going to split some of the rooms up. So I'll make extra bedrooms out of it, which will make it more valuable. So where you have a 2-bedroom house, you'll now have a 4-bedroom house. I may have to upgrade the kitchens and bathrooms. So I explain all that to people. But most of the time, when you're talking to people who are, say, tired landlords or people who've owned the property and they have got, what shall I say, they can't sell it, they can't rent it or don't want to rent it out, they just feel it's a liability, they're quite happy just to let you take it over. I always have an agreement. I have a written agreement in place. I always carry it with me. So should anyone be interested in going ahead, They can sign up there and then, or you can get what's called terms of agreement. I do that first because my experience has been if you try and get solicitors involved, they tend to screw up the deal. And I've lost some very good deals because of solicitors. The owners wanted to go ahead, the solicitors got in, and they caused all kinds of problems with it. So I get the agreement first. There's nothing to stop you afterwards getting it formalised by solicitors, but I make the agreement there. It really is fantastic. Once you get your head around the idea of doing rent to rent, you wonder why you bothered buying. It's I can't think of an easier way of making money. You don't need to get finance. You don't have to be credit worthy. You don't have to own the property. There is very little acquisition costs to doing the whole business. Why bother buying? Once you get used to this idea of rent to rent.
Jim, can I just stop you right there? Because one of the things that Jim has failed to put in there is that with the rent to rent, okay, you're going into agreement, and let's just say between 5 and 7 years with the landlord. But you've also got to remember, you've got to cover your backside every step of the way. So what me and Jim do with our rent to rents is that we put in a break clause, which allows us to walk away, giving the landlord notice within 4 weeks or 1 calendar month. So at any one point, our risk to the landlord is 1 month's notice.
Yeah, absolutely right. Be perfectly clear about this. I'm not taking property off people who think I'm going to take it for a long-term period with the intention of giving it back. I want to keep it and make money out of it. That's what I'm doing it for. I'm not going to spin my wheels acquiring a property. But I started doing that because I took properties I didn't really want. People said to me, Jim, please take this property off me. And I look at it and think, I won't live here. The place is terrible. I don't think I'm going to be able to get tenants to live here. So I thought, well, I'll give it a spin. I'll give it a go, but I'll have 4 weeks break clause in the agreement so that if it doesn't work out, I can back out of it. Otherwise, I've got the property and I like to have 120 months. Don't mention 10 years. 10 years sounds a long time. It's the language you use. I want it for 120 months. Is the minimum period I will take on a property, but I have the break clause. So you may think it's slightly unfair on the owner's point of view, but I wouldn't take the property. And a lot of the time, the owner's faced with giving it to me or handing the keys back to the mortgage company and ending up being in negative equity and owing a big chunk of money. So you're doing a service for the society by taking these properties, not having the banks losing money on having to repossess and they ending up going bankrupt or having this debt hanging over them.
Okay, one person has just very quickly asked, what notice period does the landlord have to give us as the tenant? Well, technically speaking, if they're tied to us for 10 years, we're tied to them at any one point 4 weeks or 1 month. That may seem slightly unfair, but you've got to work on the basis that if you're going to turn it into a HMO, you're going to be spending a considerable amount of money on their property and upgrading their property. And if should they wish to try and terminate the agreement, technically speaking, you can sue them for the whole 10 years rent.
Loss of rent.
Loss of rent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Arsh. But you don't want to do it. I mean, the idea is you're taking the property, you're giving them a guaranteed rent, that taking away the responsibility from themselves of worrying about the property. And my intention is to keep the property. I'm now getting much more confident. I've done 20 properties. Everything I've taken has let eventually. Some are a bit slower than others. Some properties in surprising areas have let. I'm just amazed how much demand there is out there. People say to me, you've got 100 properties and they're all within 10 minutes of you, Jim. Have you saturated the area? Well, tell you what, I'm still getting properties and I'm still letting them.
And just so that you know that Jim's been doing this for quite a while, and I learnt off Jim. And in May last year, I started looking at the rent-to-rent strategy. And we're only in February, but I've got 14 rent-to-rent properties. I could still go out and keep buying, but I've decided that I've got enough properties of my own. With 500 tenants, I think I've done pretty well. Now, I'm only going out and aggressively looking for rent-to-rent strategies. One person asked, are the landlords aware of this 4 weeks notice? Yes, they're perfectly aware because it's in the agreement. If they're not happy with the agreement, we're not putting a gun to anyone's head. We're not asking them to sign there and then. If they're not happy with the terms, unfortunately, unless they work with us and our terms, believe it or not, we walk away because as one door closes, another one opens.
You're absolutely right. The agreement I use is only about 18 paragraphs. I go through paragraph by paragraph, explain very simply to them what it's involved in this. Most of them are not interested. The thing I find is they look upon me as the mug for taking this liability off them. It's an amazing sort of difference of attitude. People down south don't understand this, but people in my area often look upon property as a liability, while people down south would give their right hand to be on the property ladder. It's amazing how one person's, what are the old saying going? One person's food is another person's poison, or whatever. It's strange. So you need an agreement. That's the starting point. I find it's easy. It focuses people's mind. And strange enough, when it comes to the agreement, a question I often get asked is, "Can I show it to my solicitor?" I say, "Of course, please do." And strange enough, that in itself makes people reassures people. And some of them just say, "Oh, okay, if I can show it to my solicitor, I won't bother showing it to my solicitor," and sign there and then. I do tell them they should get a solicitor's advice on it. I also tell them that solicitors will usually advise them not to go ahead. I also ask them, what does the solicitor suggest you do? If you can't afford to pay the mortgage on the property and you're in negative equity, what do you do with the property if you can't sell it? The solicitors never have an answer for it. They're just trying to cover their own liabilities by saying, this is a bit unusual, we don't know about it, blah, blah, blah. Virtually no costs involved in taking on the property, though it will cost you money to convert it into an HMO. And on the course, which we'll be telling you about in a minute, I'll show you how you can save. I have a rent-free period. In other words, I usually go for about 12 months rent-free. Depends on whether the owner can afford it. Remember, some of these people have had the property for years and not being able to rent it out or do anything with it. So a few more months rent-free won't make any difference. So I can cover a lot of the costs of converting it by having a rent-free period. As we say, we put a break clause in the agreement to cover ourselves, should it not work, but it always does. So it's not something that's going to be a problem. You don't need to be creditworthy to do this. You just need to know the skills, the techniques to be able to do this. And that's what we'll be doing. I'm running a course on is it the 8th, Ash?
8th and 9th of March.
Yeah, 8th of March, showing you how we go about it, going through the techniques. We'll play out some of the strategies where you negotiate with the vendors, explaining what to do, and run through the typical objections that people have when you put over this idea to them. Shall we have a run through some of the properties I've acquired? Got 20 properties. They would make an income of over 300,000 for me. They're worth over £3 million, and I haven't really tried to do this. All I've done is being ready to take the opportunity when it arose. And you'll be surprised how often the opportunity arises without even looking. Take the example of, I call it New Road. That makes me an income of £16,000 per annum. The gross rent on that is about £24,000. I pay the owner £3,600, £300 a month, £3,600 a year. I pay all the bills on that, which is again about £3,600. So I'm left with about £16,000. I've still got to take out of that the voids, the bad debts, maintenance, but as I've just refurbished it to HMO standards, it wouldn't cost very much. And that property, the owner only gave me 2 months rent-free, not quite as much as I wanted to. So still, that one property would give a substantial amount of income and a starting just on one property. The next property we're looking at is very simple property. Chap had bought it. He wanted to get into the property business. He had a large chunk of money, and he bought this very cheaply in auction. 18 months later, he still hadn't got it going. The first set of builders came along, took the deposit for the materials and never came back. The second builder came in, took out all the central heating. I don't know why he did that. Maybe it's something to do with the copper pipe that could be sold quite cheaply. The owner of the property by that time had lost interest in it. I came along, offered him to rent it off him on a 120-month agreement. He readily agreed to it, and that makes me about £12,000 a year out of the property.
Now, this, Jim, is a meaty one.
Yes.
Someone's asking, Jim, about your tax. And reason, I'm sure we've got some people from HMRC
Yes, we
online. But what we found is that because you've got an agreement to rent the property off the owner, is the rental income taxable?
Of course it is. It's not the income, it's the profit that's taxable. I don't usually bother talking about me because that doesn't help you get your properties or focus on what's got to be done. What I do and how good I am is not so important as to how you can do it. And the bigger the deal, the fantastic returns. So the small properties, little terrace house, 2 bedrooms, yeah, they make a few quid for you. But you get a big property, and there's care homes coming on the market now. The care home business, I think, seems to be collapsing. I don't know, the government seems to want to shut them all down. And if you can turn them into a multi-let, they do very well. This is a big property. It had 18 rooms, and it's an existing HMO. So an up-and-going HMO has 18 rooms in it, all en suite. With my experienced eye, I can turn that into a 35-bed HMO because there's so much wasted space. There's a whole floor that's virtually empty. There's chunks of corridor that just haven't bothered to do anything. You can get an extra room out of it, and I could make a lot more out of it. But as it stands, it's making me 50 grand a year out of that property. Example number 4 goes to show it doesn't have to be a big property. This is just a flat. It was a 2-bedroom flat above a shop. I haven't got the shop. The owner of the shop got fed up with tenants above. I came along, took it off him. I've made it into a 5-bed HMO. How did I do that? Well, I take the lounge, I split that. I took a bedroom, I split that. The other bedroom was a little bit too small to split. So I've got 5 rooms out of the property. Nice lounge, sitting room in the flat. And it brings me an income of 9,700 in the property. Sorry, someone's asking a question there. What
one of the questions is, how easy is it to get change of use on a care home? Believe it or not, very straightforward. Because a care home, one of my specialities is getting care homes and turning them into HMOs. Because a care home has shown previously that they've got, let's just say, a 19-bed care home. Technically speaking, that care home has shown the authority that it's had 19 people live in it. All it is an application. I'd be very surprised if you got turned down on planning permission to change it from care home use to HMO use.
Yeah, planning is a big bogeyman for most people. I've just written a book on planning in HMOs. Hopefully, by the time the course is started, I'll be able to. Ash, how about? Do you mind if I give my first edition of the book away on the course when we do it? It hasn't even been published. So if you sign up tonight for the course, which we talk about it, I will give you free a copy of my HMO planning and HMO book. It hasn't been published yet. You can have the pre-publication copy for coming along. Talking about care homes, the other big favourite is pubs. The same argument goes for pubs as it does for care homes. They were busy properties. Local authorities would have very little justification for refusing allowing you to turn a pub into an HMO, especially when the pub's shut down. It's just empty and derelict, and there's plenty of them. You can pick them up in this area very cheaply. They're enormous. They usually got car parks to go with them, though HMO tenants don't have much need for car parks because they don't have cars. This one brings in an income, example 5 here is 13,000, but I could make a substantially massive increase in the income if I turn the ground floor into an HMO. I haven't got round to doing it. There's the potential. So for an expenditure of about 20,000, I could increase that income to about, is it 39,000 I could make out of that property? Yeah, it goes up to 39 for a cost of 20,000. I ought to get my finger out and get on with that one because I'm losing out on money. But unfortunately, that's what we do, leaving money on the table. Anyway, Ash, you're going to tell them about the what we're going to be running.
Okay, just before I do that, someone wants to know really what's the average conversion cost on a HMO. But I suppose that all depends on size. If you're converting something into a 6-bed, let's just say you're converting a 2-bed mid-terrace property into a 6-bed HMO, what would be the average cost of that?
It's going to cost you at least 20,000, I'd have thought, to do that. But if you take a 5-bedroom house that is 5 bedrooms and turn it into a 5-bed HMO, it'll probably only cost you a few thousand because you haven't got much work to do. It depends on the property itself. I know a lot of people who do this rent-to-rent model, and they just pick certain types of properties. They just spend a lot of effort just finding one type of property that all they have to do is go in and put the locks on the doors, and that's about all they have to do to it. They've got an existing property, it's a layout that works ideally for an HMO, and that's all they do.
Okay, and someone else has asked, do we require building regulations? If you're going to put in en suites, then yes. But building regulations will never cause you a problem. It's only if you require planning permission, and if what you're trying to create is something out of the ordinary, where I think you'd have a problem. Building regulations will only be interested more so in stuff like your plumbing and making sure that properties have got adequate drainage in order to accommodate for the extra usage. So from a traditional 2-bed mid-terrace property, which would have normally had a house in, a family in, now you're going to have potentially 5 or 6 individuals. That's 5 or 6 individuals' waste that you've got to account for, but very straightforward to do. And providing that you do it correctly and your builder does it correctly, I don't think you'll have any problems. One thing that you've also got to take into consideration is fire regulations. With HMOs, never scrimp on fire safety. You've got to remember that there's going to be 6 individual people there, and the last thing that you want on your conscience is the fact that someone died in one of your HMOs. Me and Jim are both lucky because we've never been. We always put fire safety at the forefront of everything that we do. We make sure that we've got the highest standard of fire equipment in the property, so that a fire officer, if there is ever an event in a property, the first thing that goes off is a fire alarm, which alerts all the residents in the property to basically get the hell out the property. Jim, do you agree with that?
Absolutely right. You can get away with many sins in this business, but if you're over the top on fire safety, local authority will tend to forgive you. You'll find that I tend to be a bit nasty about local authority officials, but most of them are there out to help you. You go and ask them for advice. Go and talk to building control. They'll tell you what to do. They'll help you. You go and talk to the housing standards. They're very helpful people to deal with. Anyway, we better tell them about the course.
Okay, so on Saturday the 8th of March, we're running a weekend course, and on the Saturday we're doing the options to HMOs. And in there, what we'll be looking at what types of properties to look for and those to leave, where to find the properties, how to approach the owner, what to say to them, and more importantly, what not to say. It's obviously key. It's almost like dealing with a BMV when you're going out to a vendor to try and buy the property. You want to be able to get that property as cheaply as possible, but to create that win-win situation. So it's really important to know what to say and what not to say. And more importantly, we'll be giving you the paperwork to use to seal the deal.
That's right. I'll give you a copy of the lease agreement I give to my tenants. That would cost you thousands to be drafted by a solicitor. You can take it away and use it as you wish, adapt it as you wish, and that in itself is worth more than the course itself. But even more than that, what we do, Ash.
Right, okay, so normally if you go on the website, which is arshilahi.com, you'll notice that this course is being offered for $497 for the 1 day. But don't worry, don't click off just yet, because what we're doing, we're throwing it into a weekend, and on the Sunday, the 9th of March, we're doing a course which is called the DIY eviction. Now, evicting someone can be quite a challenging and a legal minefield. But if we were to say to you that we've come up with a system that allows you to evict a tenant yourself without the expensive costs of solicitors and reducing the court fees, would that help you? Now, Jim has reduced the time that it takes to evict a tenant from 27 weeks to just 9 weeks, and you can usually get an immediate court date. More importantly, he'll be showing you how to make money from the eviction process. and normally we would charge £297 for the day. Now, because you guys have been a fantastic audience and you've asked a lot of questions, and we like questions because questions shows us that you're interacting with us. If you buy both days, you can have them both for £597. But more importantly, Jim has said to me this evening that we're also going to throw in a HMO manual, which he normally sells on his website for £597. You can have that absolutely free.
That's the full detail. That is my guide to becoming a multimillionaire HMO landlord. That tells you everything you need to know to become an HMO landlord, how to set it up, how to run the business. We're going to throw that in free on the day, £597. And also, remember, we're going to do the book on how to deal with planning and HMOs. This is my new bonus book, which we specially put in tonight because we love you lots.
Okay, the one thing that I've just put into the chat area is I've actually just sent over a link which will allow you to buy that for the discounted price. And on the basis that if you put in that you've spoken to Jim on the webinar, the first thing that we'll be doing is as soon as you turn up on the course, we'll be giving you the manual.
Yep, that's right.
Are there any questions? I believe we've actually done very well to get Jim back on board and back on time. So, are there any questions? Now, someone's asked, would this work all over the country? Jim, I've done this in lots of different areas. The key is knowing, it's like anything, it's knowing what to say and how to say it, how to present yourself, but more importantly, have the documentation to be able to back up everything that you say. So going out and meeting a vendor is one thing, but going out completely unprepared, don't expect to bring that property in. Now, because me and Jim have both got tools, I would say 99% of the time, every time we go out and meet a vendor, because we've perfected our skill of negotiation, we will be returning with the keys. And this is exactly what we want to be giving you.
That's right.
Someone's asked...
Should I just, sorry, interrupt Arch there. Just learn from us. You've got the benefit of many years' experience. Between us now, we've done 33 properties. We've learned. So you can ride on the shoulders of us.
But it's fair to say, Jim, that combined between us, we have over 1,000 tenants. So you are speaking to two of the industry heavyweights. So what we'd like to do is, someone's asked, do we have any other dates? Because some of you, I appreciate that may be short notice. What I will do is that we will be putting a date on a date every month for the rest of the year. But the offer only stands if you pay this evening. So if you pay this evening and you can't make the March date, we will be happy to transfer you onto one of the other months. So let's just say potentially we'll be looking at either the 5th or 6th of April or the 26th or 27th of April. So if that's of interest, please don't be afraid to pay for the course and just put in there that we'd like to come on another date. I'll tell you what, Jim, we're feeling generous.
Are we?
Because Jason has asked if they pay tonight, and only if they pay tonight, they can bring their partner for absolutely free.
Come on, Arch.
I think I've lost my mind.
You have. Absolutely right there. Go on. I want to go home to bed. I've had enough. Come on. I've had a great time with you all. Go on. Let them have a partner for free.
Okay. If you can't make the date, so we're going to produce the DVD of the weekend. That's something that we can look into. But the one thing that we are conscious of is that we are running short on time. Some people, someone's just put here, my problem is that in my area, Northampton, they have Article 2 restrictions in most areas around the town centre, and so that you cannot get HMO in this area. Believe it or not, when you get a rent-to-rent, you don't have to create a HMO to make money from it. I've taken rent-to-rents on a standard property, and because I haven't wanted to spend any money on that property, I've rented it out on a single let and still making £300, £400, £500 a month. So that's something that I will throw into the course because that will be my contribution. There are lots of people saying, how do we find vendors?
We'll tell them on the day.
So like I said, so what we're throwing in 2 days. On the Saturday, we're doing the lease options to HMOs, how to get HMOs for free. On the Sunday, we're going to be showing you, once you've got your HMOs, once you've tenanted them, if you've made a wrong decision with a tenant, how to get rid of them quickly and cheaply and effectively. And if you buy both days for $597, we're going to be throwing in a HMO manual for free. But more importantly, you can bring your partner for absolutely free. The course is actually being held in Wolverhampton. And the one thing that we will be doing is we'll be sending out the slides tomorrow morning to all attendees. Yeah. But the one thing that we are very conscious of is that the offer is only standing for this evening. So if it is of interest to you, please go online and book on the course, because we are limited to only 25 people, and we can guarantee almost by tomorrow evening the course will be full. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all. Jim, would you like to say a quick thank you?
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. And so many of you kept listening to this point. It's been fantastic. It's great to talk to you all tonight.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to wish you a lovely evening. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like a copy of the webinar recording so you can listen to everything that we've said again, please get in contact, send us an email. But more importantly, if you've liked what you've heard in the webinar, go on Facebook and say that you've just listened to Jim and Arsh on their webinar and that you thought it was either fantastic, you might think it is crap. Either way, we're here to learn from you. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Good night.
Thanks and good night.